Oh my goodness. James, I feel like we haven't done a live stream in forever. I feel like it's been a while, man. What's going on? I mean, I talk to you every week, so it's like, what's going on? But talk to me. Tell me anything new happened since we last talked?
Well, we're officially getting into summer. I mean, we're in June now,
so yeah, it's beautiful.
Amazing weather out right now. At least where I am. I don't know. I mean, at this point in the year, we're usually seeing people put out content for like player lists and things like that, or just general lists on evaluations, right? So right now there are a few YouTubers that talk ball that are pretty major, pretty big. They've got pretty decent followings. My boys, both Jolly Olive and Robbie Hyde, fantastic content. If you haven't checked them out, definitely go check them out. And Giraffe Neck Mark's been doing content for a while. If you're a baseball YouTube fan, you've probably heard of him. It was kind of like he started making content and got pretty big for player analysis. And then I felt like a lot of other people who felt like they could do a better job than him decided to jump in on it. And now we have a whole YouTube community for baseball, really. Fuzzy does his content. You got Baseball Bites. You got a ton. Hopefully, baseball guy Sean keeps doing his work because he's one of them as well. But I went and I was looking at Mark's content because I hadn't looked at his content in quite a while, and I was doing some evaluations of it because people can improve, people can get better at their evaluations, and at one point in time there were quite a few people who were definitely better than him at evaluation. So loop your way around to his content again. Maybe he had gotten better at one thing or two things because that's how it is. You get behind, you make adaptations, adaptations rather, and you hopefully progress. So I thought what would be a really cool thing to do live would be to go through one of his videos and just kind of see where I agree, see where I disagree, and I'm sure we can link the original in the comments, so at least he's getting some views. I have definite disagreements with him, but he's part of the baseball YouTube community, and I'd love to make content with him. Mainly because there's no reason to drum up rivalries about this. It's a bubble that is blowing up right now, and I think it would be really cool at some point to get some of the major channels to make content together more regularly. John Boy Media, he does some great stuff. You got Trevor Bauer with his channel. There's tons of channels out there. There's a lot of channels out there for baseball, and I think it's really exploding right now. So when I do critique his list, Mark, this is no disrespect to you. On your end, you got to reply back to my email, fam. But we were emailing back and forth for a little bit, but he kind of dropped the ball on that. That's all right. It's all good. People have their lives going on. But hopefully we can get him a little bit of more people to watch his content, and hopefully, he can get some people over here to watch our content. So it's a community, and that's how communities should work. So, but without further ado, let's launch into Mark's June 1st release of ranking every single MLB catcher in a tier list. So I'm going to go past the point where he gives credit to the people who are sponsoring him, and we're going to get the video started right around the 1:15 second
For you guys, baseball fans, MLB TV has blackouts. ExpressVPN gives you unrestricted access to all parts
talking
of the
about
internet.
his VPN stuff.
Is a good catcher. I don't think.
Okay, who was the first one we're going with?
Mark, go to it. Links in the description. Thank you to ExpressVPN
plug your stuff. Plug your stuff.
Video.
I get
so
it.
Here we go.
Okay, here we are.
Starting catcher in Major League Baseball for the 2021 season. Of course, there might be a few tinkers here and there with some guys who could have possibly lost their starting job or have some injuries. But overall, I think it's a pretty good list here. So we're going to start off with Austin Nola. I think Austin Nola is
all right. Before he jumps in, he just said he thinks he's good, but he'll probably get into the details there in a minute. But Nola for me is a polish play. He's a more of an average catcher than a truly good or great one. Fan of the defense. I think he could be an outstanding backup catcher, or if you want to use him as like a super utility, kind of move him around the roster. I think he could be outstanding in that role, but I do not consider him an above average catcher. He's going to have to put in a little bit more work, to show that he can do this performance that he did, recently. At least one more season, at least one more year. So let's see how Mark views this guy. I view him as having better results power than he actually has deep down. Like, I don't think his power is completely for real. So at least the results. So.
I don't think he's necessarily an all-star. I think he's a little bit above average. His real value is that he can catch and he can also play a lot of different positions. Like, he's pretty solid defensively.
This is a good point that Mark makes. He's pretty solid defensively, not elite, but he can play a lot of different positions. And that's why I say that kind of super utility player, because you don't usually see a super utility player that can also be your backup catcher. That being said, are we measuring players on this list, or are we measuring catchers on this list? If we're measuring catchers on this list, we cannot say that Nola is necessarily a good player. We can say he's average. We can say that as an everyday catcher, he would be average. But, if we're talking about players in general, yes, he's a good player, not what I'd call a good everyday catcher. So I wouldn't file him quite into that category of good. I put him in the category of average for now. But if you're going to have an arrow on it like you do in fantasy baseball, he's definitely trending up. Swing change guys, they can kind of change their careers because your swing mechanics are so key to what you're trying to do at the plate that if you go from bad swing mechanics, which you're still just able to maintain good results with, to good swing mechanics, lots can change. That being said, I don't know if it's enough. I don't think that Nola's changed his swing mechanics to be fundamentally sound. I think it's just taking advantage of balls that he can probably pull. And that's it. I think that's the only advantage that his new swing mechanics give him. So, Mark, 100%, very valuable because he can play a bunch of different positions and is pretty adequate defensively behind the plate.
A pretty decent bat. That is basically the definition of like a good catcher for you. He's going to help your team win some games. He's fine. He's good. Buster Posey. Buster Posey is...
Oh, yeah, hold on. Before we get into Posey, Posey is a superstar. Posey has had like one down year in his entire career in which he was injured and had no lineup protection, and he was still, I believe, 7% above league average. So Posey's a superstar. He's still doing it. He's always done it. Superstar.
Sorry. I still want to put him in the good category, but Buster Posey's really surprised me. He's turned it around. He goes into the all-star category.
So he's not putting him in the superstar category, which I don't understand. He's putting him in the all-star category, maybe because of the age, but age doesn't matter if you're always putting up numbers. Like, his numbers look completely legitimate and completely real. He's always done numbers like these numbers. These are the best numbers you're going to get offensively by far out of any catcher. And he's also giving you elite defense like he always has, while being one of the biggest leaders in baseball. Like, people have always said that, like, Posey to the Giants is Jeter to the Yankees. Like, I disagree here with Mark. I think that Posey needs to be on a higher level, superstar, and I think that Nola needs to be on an average level, unless we are looking at amongst all players. Because amongst all players, a catcher who can also play super utility, that's a good player. But amongst catchers, if we're just talking about being the everyday guy at one position, aka catcher, Nola doesn't have that kind of value. So far, I disagree with Mark. I think Posey should be up one. I think Nola should be down one. But it's nothing crazy. So let's keep going.
Years he hadn't been able to hit, but this year, while he has cooled off a little bit, he's hitting like the old Buster Posey, the guy who's won MVPs. Until I see it for a full season, we're not going to get him, put him in the superstar category, but he's still got a strong glove. He has the strong bat back again. All-star, Buster Posey without a doubt. He's had a really good season thus far. Carson Kelly, I don't know what's going on with
So Carson Kelly, definitely is a lefty masher. Hits righties enough where he's definitely a stud. He's a stud, and there's no way around it. Fantastic defender. Technically, this season, the numbers are him coming out of his sophomore slump. So he's really just kind of continuing on what he did his rookie year. I understand why the Cardinals moved him. It's mainly because Yadi's so great. You know, Yadi is Yadi, right? And he's still proving that. But Kelly is a really, really top-notch catcher in his own right. He's got phenomenal defense. And I think against righties, he works the count to get to his power. So it's not necessarily like he can't hit righties, but where he does like the most heavy lifting is going to be against lefties. I view Carson Kelly as a stud. He's definitely, one of the better catchers in baseball. He's not an average player. Where I would have him ranked is definitely this year I'd have him as an all-star. In years moving forward, I'd have him in the good category. Doesn't mean he can't have future all-star years. It's just I don't think he's going to quite put up the offensive numbers that he's been putting up this year in the future versus righties. But, that doesn't mean he's not a top 10 catcher. If we're looking at my preseason list, he actually missed the preseason list. He was one of the guys that jumped onto the list and bumped some of, the guys who hadn't been performing out of the way. So, this is one of the ones that it pains me to say he's so good, but he is. He's genuinely a very good player. So I would put him in the category of all-star for this season, but I can understand a good ranking given that he wasn't very good at all last year. Let's see where Giraffe Neck Mark puts him.
Side of his face there kind of looks like he has like a blonde dreadlock going over there, but Carson Kelly I think is also going to go in the all-star category. Good. I think Carson
very
Kelly
good.
Has blown up
100% all-star. Now let's see his reasoning.
He is dropping some bombs. He's hitting for power. He's always crushed left-handed pitching, but in all honesty, he's having a really good season, had a good year back in 2019. He's put together a good stretch of being a top catcher in the league, and right now, the way he's playing with the numbers he's got, he is an all-star catcher in the National League for sure, despite even playing on a bad team in the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's one of the bright spots on that roster. Christian Vazquez. I think
Yeah. All right. Very fair takes by Mark here. Very fair ranking by Mark here. I do not disagree with basically anything he said about him. Now he's going to go into Christian Vazquez, who is historically a hot and cold player. He goes through large periods of time of being like 15 to 25% below league average. And then he'll turn it on for like a few months, and he'll be like a well above average offensive catcher. But Vazquez doesn't even necessarily need to hit that much in order to be one of the better catchers in baseball, because he is so phenomenal defensively that if you just got league average hitting out of him, you'd be fine. And given that he's a hot and cold player, and hot and cold players typically get their swings in line closer to the second half or into the second half of the season, I don't think that we can determine what kind of year Vazquez is going to have yet. He's had enough seasons in the past where he's hit around league average or above league average, where I do believe that that's who he is, even if he comes in like 5% below league average. What's really interesting is that if you break down his numbers defensively and you just look at how much above or below league average he is offensively, rather than looking at how he puts up the numbers, he compares almost identically to Yadier Molina. Absolutely insane levels of defense, right about league average levels of offense, although some years it'll definitely be higher. Some years it'll definitely be lower, as it was for Yadi. Except the only difference, I think, is Yadi's a contact bat. He's aggression, he's contact, he's power. And Christian Vazquez, he's all about patience. He's all about working the count to get to pitches that he can drive. And that's kind of why he's hot and cold, because when you're not swinging, your ideal bat path, your perfect bat path, you may not be meeting the ball where you want to meet it. It may result in ground balls to the second baseman if you're a righty, or ground balls to the shortstop if you're a lefty. Or unless, they're really trying to get you, if you're a lefty, to put you right in the shift. But Vasquez, yeah, I don't think that this is a point in the season where you can look at his numbers and be like, yeah, this is who he is, and like now all of a sudden because it's defense first and it's offense second, he's an average catcher. No, Christian Vasquez is a above average catcher. This year so far, again, because we haven't seen the hot side come around yet. Remember, it takes a while for the hot side to come around. I would put him in the good category. I would not put Christian Vasquez in the all-star category. But if he ever has a year where he starts hot, you got to put him in the all-star category because the all-stars are based off of the numbers that you have by that point in the season. That's how the voting ends up getting done. So, I expect Giraffe Neck Mark to put Vasquez in the good category. If he puts him in the average category, I mean, I can understand it because maybe he doesn't understand the difference between hot and cold players and how their numbers show up during the season, or maybe he's just one of those guys who's, what have you done for me lately, which is a terrible idea because you could be hitting balls right at someone. Hopefully he doesn't put Christian Vasquez into the below average category because that would be fairly ignorant. All right, so let's go.
Vasquez is a good catcher. While the numbers aren't there offensively the last few years, he has an OPS that hovers right around 800. He has a really good glove. Like, he's very strong defensively. I like Christian Vasquez. I'm not going to put him in the all-star category because I'm aware the bat's just not been very strong this year. But we've seen in the past, we know he's got the good glove. He was a defensive first catcher. He's a good player. He's definitely solid, a above average catcher. Danny Jones.
Yeah, there we go. There we go, Mark. How about that? All right. Well done. Well said. Completely agree. I thought he was going to mess up with this one, believe it or not. Good on you, man.
People are going to get on me because they're going to be like, oh, Danny Jansen's so good defensively. It doesn't matter. Like, there's that whole MLB Instagram and, like, people that like to say, like, oh, Tyler Flowers.
All right, so now he's talking about Danny Jansen, who he had a stud defensive year his first year in the league. His second year in the league, the defense fell off a cliff. I believe he was known to be, an elite offensive catcher through the minors. He was a top prospect. Came up to the big leagues. There was the defense that was never there in the minors, but there was no offense. And then the second year, the offense came in, but there was no defense. And now it doesn't look like there's offense or defense because the league has now adapted to him. Jansen's going to have to make some adjustments if he's going to be an above average everyday big league catcher, mainly because he also has Reese McGuire on his team who has to make those adjustments as well, former top prospect. And then he also has Alejandro Kirk, who actually already played a bit this year and last year and was an above average player, above average hitter. He's a bowling ball of a human. He's like 5'7", 5'8", 300 pounds. But if you can hit, you can hit. He's very fun to watch. He's very, very fun to watch. But Kirk is not ranked on here as the Blue Jays catcher. It is Danny Jansen, who Mark is talking about now. I don't really think Jansen's very special. I think if you're looking in the future, Jansen, he's got the eye at the plate and he is a good enough swing and he has the strength in his body that with enough reps at the big leagues, I could see him be a decent catcher. Decent hitting catcher, not really great on defense. That being said, it's going to take a few years if that materializes. And there's no way to be sure that that's even going to materialize right now. So unless you're judging him on a few years in the future, right now Jansen deserves to be in the below average category. And because he can't hit or play defense, either of them, I wouldn't really mind putting him in the trash category for this season alone. And I know that that's kind of harsh. And I know a lot of people just think that I'm biased against the Blue Jays because, I've said that they're a fourth place team, but I actually like half their roster. I don't have anything against them. I loved it when Tulo was playing for them. I loved Bautista when he was playing for them. Like, I don't hate the Blue Jays. Donaldson when he was with them. This is just honesty. If you can't catch defensively and you can't hit offensively and you can't run the bases, you're kind of trash until you change. So
And is that your final? That's your final judgment?
He's either below average or trash. I think to get a, you know what? No.
Oh man, come on! I was gonna.
He's trash.
I was.
He's trash. That's it. He's trash. That's the final judgment. Just for this season, trash. Yeah. Oh man, I love it. I love it. But no, seriously though, just for this year, that's where I'm putting him. There's enough catchers in the league where you have to put some at trash. That's how it works. There has to be some for every category. Otherwise, is just everyone good? No. If you're performing like trash, and the numbers back it up in almost every way, like trash. All right, let's keep going.
Top 5 catcher because of his defense. Oh, Austin Hedges is top 5. Like, no, that's not how we exist. That's not how we do it here. You have to be able to do both in order to actually be good. Danny Jansen does. Danny Jansen can't hit for anything, but at least he has a good glove. So for me, I'll put him in below average.
But he doesn't have a good glove. His first year in the league, he had a great glove. Second year in the league, it was terrible. And since then, it's been average to below average. So, I get, Mark, that you want to look at really recent statistics, or I get, Mark, that you want to, use what, he was when he first came into the league as, like, I guess, a little bit of bias. Or maybe you just don't know. Maybe you don't know that this guy has no defensive history of being plus. But, yeah, no. So, maybe if you were aware about that, you'd put him in trash. But you're putting him in below average. It's not unforgivable, with the lack of defensive knowledge on him, but whatever.
Glove is very, very strong. It's the only thing keeping on a major league roster, but the bat's horrendous. It's bad. Elias Diaz, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Okay, Diaz is a really interesting one because I saw him in the Arizona Fall League. He's got, if you were to just focus on it, one of the most phenomenal catch and throw type arms out there. I don't know if it's still this good, but back then, he was able to throw out just about anyone. He had a really good bat, at least for contact, not for power at all. And I was really this was when he was in Double-A, I believe. And I was really looking at him as like a phenomenal defensive catcher who, if they could just figure out offense, like power hitting, then they might be able to take a step, which is probably why the Rockies took a chance on him. But if we're being honest about him, he can't hit. And I haven't seen the same levels of defense that I saw in the minors. Seems like a very average, everyday big league catcher. And I don't mean average in like, I'd put him in the average category. I mean average in that, if you took any random minor leaguer and you put them into the catcher role, most of them wouldn't be able to do it, at a big league level for the whole year. Elias Diaz is a guy who can catch at a big league level for a full year. Now, does that mean I'd even put him in the average category on here? No, because amongst catchers, he's not average. But given his potential, I do have a hard time putting him in trash. That being said, I understand that that's my bias, and he belongs in trash. So that's where I'm going to put him.
I think I'm going to start playing the purge alarm every time you go off. Because when you disagree with something, you're immediately like no.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm very critical with Mark because instead of saying, I feel this or I feel that, a lot of his statements are very definitive, and like some of the stuff apparently he doesn't know. So it seems a little arrogant to me, and it comes across in a bad way. But if he doesn't mean it, it's very clear, like. I'm sure that I occasionally come across in the same way, but like it's not on purpose. But like that's the whole thing. If you're so sure about a fact, then you better be right about it, because otherwise you're saying something that is just kind of blatantly ignorant and kind of deserves to be ragged on. Like we were talking about whether we should even do this video on Mark because like people would be like, "Oh, you're clout chasing" or whatever, and I'm like, well, then that means if you have clout, you can't be critiqued. You can't be wrong if you have clout because whoever is critiquing you, unless they also have clout, is then clout chasing. And that's nonsense, especially when we're talking about a guy who, like, I have a history of emailing back and forth with him. Like, I'd be glad, if he called me out, when I'm being wrong. So I hope I'm helping. I don't know, whatever. People get sensitive when they, get told they're wrong these days. And I kind of get it. I mean, we live in a culture of narcissists, but that's a conversation, I think, for a different style video.
We're getting off topic here.
Yes, way off topic. Absolutely. So let's jump back in, talk about Elias Diaz. I'd put him in trash. Let's see where Mark puts him.
Matter, very straightforward, very simple. He's trash. He's
not
good. He's terrible defensively, terrible at the plate. There's not a lot there with Elias Diaz that makes you go, this guy is anything but trash tier. And again,
100%. Utter trash.
Look at that. Look at.
It's just not very good. Gary Sanchez. We love to take shots at Gary Sanchez on this channel.
Yeah, of course you do. You're a Mets fan who's super biased against the Yankees. And whenever anything goes wrong for the New York Yankees, you actually make videos about it. It's kind of annoying because no other fan of any other fan base, Red Sox fan or otherwise, Robbie's a Red Sox fan. He doesn't rag on the Yankees every opportunity that he gets. It's kind of annoying. And I promise you guys on this channel, I will never do that. I will never do that about the Red Sox. I will never do that about the Mets. I mean, I grew up where two of my favorite players were David Ortiz and Dustin Pedroia. Oh, and Ellsbury. I know I'm a Yankee fan. I knew I grew up a Yankee fan, but I don't know. I think it's kind of petty and bush league to make videos about other people having a tough time. Unless those people are being whiny, they deserve it, but nah, you've critiqued on Gary Sanchez for far too long, Mark. You need to stop. And I know that you're not gonna because you don't look into numbers the way that I look into numbers. And you don't know that Gary Sanchez, per David Marshall's swing research, has some of the fastest bat speed in baseball. You don't understand that his swing mechanics are some of the most fundamentally sound swing mechanics of anyone who uses that many levers in baseball. You also, I guess, are not aware of the fact that Gary Sanchez in the last month has batted 20% above league average. So his offense has come around. He just had a really terrible beginning to the season, and Yankee fans got tired of him. So since Yankee fans are tired of him and Yankee fans are ragging on him, guess what Mark's going to do?
Terrible defensively. Yes, he's gotten better, but as I've said with some people, going from F to D doesn't mean you're good. It just means you're improving. The one thing that's scary about Gary typically is his bat, but the bat has not. It just hasn't shown up recently. Why is OPS plus at
So first off, it did show up recently. If you look at the month-to-month splits, his WRC plus in the second month of the season, which is now over, is 20% above league average. So if you're looking at catchers, 20% above league average for a catcher is one of the better offensive numbers for a catcher. Now, as I've said before, when we've done our recordings, people who have elite swing speed, they're typically second half players. And Gary Sanchez, like I just said, has elite swing speed. So it makes sense. First month, he wasn't doing so well, and now he's heating up. And I'll be real with you. I don't expect he's going to be 20% above league average for the rest of the year. I think he's going to be 30 or 40% above league average for the rest of the year because he's literally in line with what I was expecting before the year. If he was going to be able to play the full season, he was going to have to pace himself because he always gets hurt halfway through. Now it's looked like he's paced himself. The first month he was very weak, but he was able to stay healthy. Second month, he's stronger, hitting the ball, and now we're entering the hot months of the year where people with elite bat speed do great. So disagree with the offensive assessment here. And then as far as the defensive assessment, he's had some really rough years, his first few years in the league. Sanchez's biggest issue is with blocking balls. The last year, he's figured out how to put that knee down. They started adopting what Garver does for the Minnesota Twins. So with the knee down, he's been able to block a lot more pitches. There have been a lot less passed balls. He's pretty good at framing. That kind of fluctuates on a year-to-year basis, but it does for a lot of other elite framers as well. He's not an elite framer, though. I won't say that. He's just decent at it, pretty good. his whole thing is that he's a catch and throw guy. So we do know that baseball has changed a lot of rules in recent years, and one of the most sensible rules to change would be to have an automated strike zone. And this has been discussed at length on a number of different platforms, bringing in the automated strike zone, because umpires don't know how to call strikes anymore. However, what people forget about is the other impacts of the automated strike zone. And I don't mean just to the batters. Any catcher who has a cannon of a throwing arm, who's a catch and throw guy, is going to become an elite defender when all of a sudden they don't have to frame the ball. All they got to do is keep the ball in front of them. And guys like Gary, who have elite arm strength and are known to be phenomenal at that specific skill, they're going to go from being liabilities behind the plate or average to below average guys. Sanchez is probably about average to below average right now. He's not necessarily liability anymore now that the pass ball thing's a bit of a past issue. I think as soon as the automated strike zone comes in, Sanchez is going to take off defensively. He's going to I think he's already about to take off offensively. We've started to see it happen before our eyes over the last 4 full weeks of games. So, no, I'm going to disagree with Mark on both of these points. Sanchez has started to hit. Sanchez defense has improved each year. And as soon as they bring in the automated strike zone so that he doesn't have to keep a knee down and he can actually be on his feet, he's going to be one of the best defenders in the sport. He's going to be one of the best at holding runners, throwing guys out, throwing behind runners, just bar none. So I'm expecting with Giraffe Neck Mark hating on his defense and with Giraffe Neck Mark hating on his offense that he's probably going to put Gary Sanchez in the below average category. But given that Gary Sanchez is a Yankee, I can see Mark overcorrecting here to try and avoid bias and ending up with Gary Sanchez in the average category. Truth of the matter is Gary Sanchez is not an average player. If we're judging by what numbers he's going to put up at the end of the year, he would be a superstar. Given that most of the numbers he's going to put up are going to be in the second half, you can't even say that he's going to be technically an all-star by that definition. But there's no way in any world that I would put Sanchez in average or below average. He's in good. If he does what I expect him to do for the rest of the year, he's a superstar. So let's see where Mark has him.
Which is basically league average. Like, that's actually exactly what it is. When he's bad defensively and just an average hitter, he really should go in below average. But because I know he's going to get hot at some point, he's going to hit. He's got the power. He's shown us it. I'll put him in the average category. I just don't know really how.
He's right. Sanchez is going to get hot. He started to get hot. If you were actually looking more into the numbers, he has been getting hot. So at least, you're on the right track. But yeah, I know he definitely belongs. If you're going to put, how are you going to put Nola ahead of him? It's Austin Nola, right? Not Aaron Nola. What am I talking about? Aaron Nola's his brother. Aaron Nola's the amazing pitcher. How are you going to have Austin Nola ahead of Gary Sanchez? That makes no sense. Austin Nola was a backup catcher his entire career until he learned a swing change, and then he became an everyday big leaguer for one season and was really good. For 1 year. For 1 year. Mind you, who hasn't done anything since then, right? And Gary Sanchez, who has had multiple big league seasons of like 30% above league average with 30 home runs at catcher, you're going to put him at average. It seems legit. Whatever.
Better he's going to get. Like, it just seems that you see Gary change and then he goes back to his old ways. You see that he's going to be committed to being better defensively, then he goes back to his old ways. I don't know with him anymore. Jorge Alfaro. Oh, man, this is
Jorge Alfaro, phenomenal arm at catcher. Very athletic. Trash. I hate to say it, trash. He has not gotten his offense together in any sort of meaningful way. Outside of the athleticism and the arm, you're not really seeing anything too special defensively. The arm is special and the athleticism is special, but like, he's not a phenomenal framer. He's not a phenomenal blocker. He's not a phenomenal game caller. If he could figure out how to become a little bit more patient in the zone to get to some more of his, athletic ability, there's power in there, but I don't know if he's going to be able to do that. I mean, I feel like this is a guy who could have done with like some more seasoning at the higher levels of the minors. The tools are there. I can't see him transfer in the current condition.
He's between like below average and trash tier. He's not that great defensively. Has a cannon of an arm. He's a great athlete, but he refuses to walk. Like, has just some of the worst plate discipline. Isn't even that
literally saying exactly what I just said. Well done, Mark.
really good of a hitter, but he has a cannon. I think I'm going to put him in below average, but there's a chance I move him to trash as I get further along with this list. He's just not very good. Even though JT Realmuto, that trade seems like it could be decent because of 6.
All right, so now he's going to go to commercial here. So far, I will say, while there's definitely been lots of disagreements with Mark, it's not necessarily that there are disagreements that are massive. Like, I would definitely have Sanchez 1 spot higher. I would have Nola 1 spot lower. I would have Posey 1 spot higher. I would have Kelly 1 spot lower. I would have Jansen 1 spot lower. I would have Alfaro 1 spot lower. But we don't have anyone who's like a 2 spot miss. Not quite. So let's keep going.
James McCann. I wish Tomas Nido was on here too, but we'll go with James McCann. He really is technically the star.
All right. So James McCann, if you're looking at his numbers, they're awful, right? There's been an upswing in the numbers fairly recently, but it's not enough to really make things that great. He's going from like 40% below league average, 45% below league average, something like that, to now being like 20% below league average. So like, yeah, that's a big improvement, but that is still well below average for a catcher who's not a stud defensively and doesn't have the tools to back it up or the prospect pedigree to back it up. And I said that James McCann was one of my biggest misses from before the year because his numbers look entirely driven by the juiced ball. Like he's literally putting up the same exact numbers that he did right before the juiced ball came into the league, like 2017, So for all intents and purposes, he doesn't look like the same guy. So, for me, I think he should be lower here. With Sanchez, a lot of his power has always been there. Juice ball, no juice ball, minors, majors. He's always had the tools. He's always had the bat speed. The bat speed, you can look it up with David Marshall's research. At some point, I want to go through that on a podcast. But with James McCann, he's never had the underlying data to really back these things up until he started just hitting the ball farther and harder over the last really 2 seasons. I think that James McCann is a below average catcher, but he's in no way, shape, or form trash. And if he keeps getting better on a month-by-month basis, he can get himself into the average category. And I'm fine putting him in the average category if Sanchez is where Sanchez needs to be, But James McCann and Sanchez, they do not belong in the same category in any way, shape, or form. If you're going to, drop Nola down to where Nola belongs and you're going to have him in the same category with James McCann, then I agree. So I guess I agree with the placement of James McCann here and that he's placing him in average. It just makes no logical sense to say Nola's better than Sanchez. James McCann is as good as Sanchez. That makes no sense. It does not check any boxes at all. So let's keep going.
I'm going to put him in average with Gary as well. He's shown plus offensive stuff the last few years with Chicago, but this year with the Mets, he's off to a really slow start. Although recently, like the last week, he's been hitting the ball a lot better. But that doesn't really matter because still he is struggling this year. Defense has been solid. He calls a great game, but it would be nice to see him step up offensively. So because of that, I'm going to put him in average. This is a guy who I probably would have had an all-star good category before, but right now with the way that he's hitting and the way that he's playing, I can't really put him much higher than average. I think that's right where he belongs. For the first...
Yeah, I guess I agree here, and on most of the same points that he's making too. I guess my disagreement with this slot is just like you can't have this guy on the same level with Sanchez. So Sanchez really seems like the most egregious pick here. It's not a good pick. But yeah, I guess that's a fair assessment of James McCann. That's fine.
Superstar catcher, we've got JT Realmuto, or as
Stud,
Chris calls him,
superstar. That's all I gotta say.
Raul Matata, because that guy's a joke. JT Realmuto is the best catcher in baseball. He's a superstar. He's a beast. Hits for average, hits for power, gets on base, plays a great defensive catcher, has a great arm. He's fantastic. He's the best athlete behind the plate in all of baseball. JT Realmuto is the best catcher in baseball in my eyes. Jacob Stallings.
I'd say that there might be a couple of guys tied with him for the best catcher spot. I'd say Sal Perez is right up there now. I'd say Posey, now that he's back to being Posey. After he took the year off in 2020. I think Posey and Realmuto and Sal Perez all belong in that conversation for the number one catcher in baseball. I think by the end of the season, Sanchez could jump in there. A couple of other guys can be in that conversation depending on what they do to their skill set. But right now, given that Realmuto has just done it every single year for the last few years, and Posey took a year off and had a down year, and Sal Perez has been working up to this. Yeah, I'd say that Realmuto could be considered the number one just because he's done it for a period of time. But the whole thing in baseball is what you're going to do and what you are now. So is he the number one moving forward? I think he's about tied. But right now, I think, you could say, I guess he's the clear number one. But it's like there's one A's right behind him. So it's just like, yeah, I'd say Realmuto's the number one, but it's just there's at least 3 or 4 guys that are right behind him where if he has a down rest of the season and they have an up rest of the season, I'd go into next year saying they're better. So, like, for instance, if Posey continues what he's doing right now for the rest of the season and Realmuto gets hurt or falls off for the rest of the season, then Buster Posey's the best catcher in baseball. So, yeah.
I think Jacob Stallings goes into the group of good catchers.
So, he's already saying that Jacob Stallings deserves to be put in the group of good catchers. I actually agree here. If you look at Stallings' numbers, they've actually gotten better about 4 years running. So his statistics look completely legitimate now. He's getting on base. He's hitting for the amount of power you'd need him to hit for. If you put him in a lineup with more lineup protection, he probably does more damage. I just think in general he belongs 100% in the good category. This is another good pick by Mark.
I just want to interrupt for a second. I don't know if you saw Travis's comment.
Oh, Travis. Hey, what's good, man? Let's see.
Can you see it on screen?
Hot take. Brewers go all out and trade for Story and the top first baseman on the market. I could actually see that. I don't know if I'd say the first baseman because I do think that they're going to bring up Keston Hiura. And I think that either using him in some sort of combination with someone or him himself, now that he's really, gotten back to hitting. I think he's a phenomenal hitter, but I think that they rushed him to the big leagues the first time. I think that there's a high possibility that now he's finally ready. So there may not be a need for a first baseman once his bat comes around. But yeah, absolutely. I could totally see them go for Story. He would be an absolutely phenomenal fit for that team. The defense, given that they're such a high defensive team, the base running, given that they prioritize BSR so highly, and they could really use another middle of the order hitter right in there with Yelich. I mean, back-to-back Story and Yelich, righty-lefty. Goodness gracious, that would be beautiful. So, yeah, that'd be pretty cool, Travis. I'd love that. I think that'd be something. And then with regards to Stallings, getting back to Stallings, if he wasn't in the Pittsburgh Pirates lineup at all, he had more lineup protection. I'm absolutely sure that this guy could be, a 25 home run bat. But I think with the kind of lineup that he has to kind of create his own lineup protection. And I think that's why you're seeing so many walks from him. But given that the Pirates have Christian Bethancourt not striking out, coming back over from the KBO, and actually producing some of the better numbers in AAA right now while being, reputably one of the best defensive catching prospects in baseball, the Pirates might be really willing to deal Stallings for the right combination of players. So if you're a team out there that's looking for catching, look into Jacob Stallings. To get back to what Mark is saying here, so far I think my biggest disagreement is Sanchez. All of the other disagreements are kind of minor, but I also can understand, not a lot of people have the data to understand who are the guys who have the fastest swing speeds at point of impact, because that data came out a couple of years ago. Okay, so some of those players, that data is not good for them anymore. But for a guy like Sanchez at his age, the data is fine. Like Judge, the data is fine. Urshela or Matt Chapman, the data is fine. I'd worry a little bit if we're talking about like maybe Donaldson or Cruz, because Cruz is like 40 and Donaldson's getting there. But no, I mean, for a guy like Sanchez, it's very clear, second half player, bat speed guy, and it looks like he's pacing himself so that he can actually be healthy for the full year for once. I was worried initially because he looked super scrawny coming out of spring training, and that can get you injured if you have his type of body type. Like, he didn't look like he had enough muscle on his frame. But as the year has gone on, it's looking like he's adding a little bit more, like each month, each few weeks. So I think that might be a purposeful thing. Like, he came into camp like so in shape that he was like tearing and pulling things halfway through the year when he started to get tired. And now he's kind of pacing himself and gaining strength as the year goes on. And I think it's really going to suit him in the second half. Mm-hmm. I really do. And I think it's going to suit him throughout his entire career. I agree with that. They rushed him up, and that Story's the perfect fit. And hey, you know what? Trade Peralta and 2 other players. Go out, pick up Scherzer. You know, honestly, I try to get the deal done for Scherzer without trading Peralta. I do think that this emergence is real for Peralta. If you could make a deal for Scherzer, given that he's on a 1-year deal, you could put him ahead of those guys. My goodness. I mean, I have a lot of confidence in the Brewers pitching. If they could get a guy like Story, that could really boost their offense to where you need it to be to truly win in the playoffs. Honestly, and this is going to sound odd, with the Brewers bullpen being as historically good as it's been, this seems odd to say, but I think if you go out there and you get an absolutely lights-out fireman to put before Hader, I think that actually would do more this year than getting, an ace starting pitcher. So I think you got the big 3. Burns, Woodruff, and Peralta, that's fine. You can get a guy who, will give you, plus playoff game, with a number 3 starter and plug him into that role as the number 4. They might even have that within house. But, and that's the other thing. In the playoffs, there are teams that have historically gone with 2, or not 2, rather, 3 starters rather than 4 starters for the whole playoff run. Like the Yankees in 2009, they used CC Sabathia, A.J. Burnett, and Andy Pettitte. They didn't use anyone else. And I think that Woodruff, Burns, and Peralta are a lot better than that. So, in my opinion, if you were to go out and you could get a real nice fireman for any time the game was being threatened, you just put him in and you could just get things done with. I think they have enough for all the other innings and all the other scenarios in the bullpen. If they could just get one guy who was truly just like nothing you could do against him. Like, they made a deal with the Dodgers for Brusdar Graterol. While Graterol has his value low right now, oh man, that could be like Jabba Chamberlain for them. At least, early Jabba before he was put in the rotation. But yeah, let's get back into some of Mark's observations here.
He's very solid defensively, a really, really good catcher behind the plate. At the plate, he's about average. He's basically a league average catcher. So when you take those two, you put them together.
He's talking about Stallings here.
Vasquez.
So
Christian Vasquez,
let me pause it for a second. He's talking about Stallings here. And he says that Stallings is like an average catcher. I don't know. I think he's an above average offensive catcher. I understand where he's coming from if you're looking at certain numbers. But if you're looking at WRC plus, which compares what you're doing to the league average, he's definitely an above average offensive catcher. And then you add in the fact that he has no lineup protection to operate with at all. So pitchers are attacking him and he's still doing this. And he's been getting better now for 4 years. No. He's an above average offensive player. So let's see. Who do we have next?
Alfaro also goes to trash because he doesn't even have like a good glove necessarily.
So he just bumped down Alfaro to trash. Hold on. Oh, we missed a guy. Okay, hold on.
League average catcher. So when you take those two, you put them together, I think that slots him in right as a good catcher.
Here
not
we go.
All-star, not superstar, but he's good.
Blah,
Jose Trevino for me is in the same
category.
category.
Jose Trevino is trash. I don't see any sort of way of putting Jose Trevino in below average. Any sort of hot streak that Jose Trevino is on is a short-term hot streak. He's known for going on those for like a month, very much like Jason Castro does. Trash.
Like Danny Jansen, where he's just not very good offensively, but defensively, that's where you get all the value from him. He's a great framer, steals a lot of strikes. He's very solid with the...
So, first and foremost, Jansen's not really that great defensively. Secondly, he even said that Alfaro's athletic and he has a good throwing arm, but he's not a good defender. And yet he's putting this guy who can't hit at all, who he's saying is a good defender, he is a good defender, on par with these guys. That doesn't make sense. None of this really checks out there. He's saying these guys can't hit and they can't play defense, and he's putting this guy on par with them because he can't hit and can play defense. But I think all of them are trash. I think Diaz is trash. I think Jansen is trash. I think Alfaro is trash. I think Trevino is trash. I think that we've seen Nola as an average option. I think we've seen you know what? I'm gonna say it. I think this is going to be a hot take. Oh, goodness. I'm going to get eaten for this one. I'd have Nola as a below-average catcher. I'm going to get eaten for that one, given that he changed the swing and had that really good year. I don't think it's real. I don't think he's that great defensively. If you can't hit and you're not that great defensively, but you can play everyday catcher at the big league level, like you're not trash, but you're below average. So, yeah, I'm going to say Sanchez is off. And Nola is off by quite a bit. The rest, there's definitely some fluctuation, as in, like, I would definitely have a bunch of players, most players in different slots, but it's not egregious. It's one spot down, one spot up.
With the bat, there's not much there. And this also makes me think now that Jorge Alfaro also goes to trash because he doesn't even have like a good glove necessarily. So he's just kind of a guy that exists. These two guys at least have a good glove, but no bat. Alfaro doesn't have much of it. So we're going to put Trevino in the below average category. Mitch Garver has kind of turned into what...
Okay, yeah. So this is, before we get into Mitch Garver, he just got hurt. Groin injury. He's going to have surgery on it. So he's not going to be catching for a while. He's also really not known to be that great of a defensive catcher, although I'd put him in the same range as Gary Sanchez. The only difference is when, the pitch framing goes away, Sanchez is going to be elite and Garver is going to be basically the same guy because Garver doesn't have the arm that Sanchez does. Also, offensively, there's not really a way to say that Garver is supposed to be what Sanchez was because Garver strikes out a lot, walks a lot, and then he just hits for power. He's a 3 true outcomes guy with a little bit of extra pop for doubles. So it's like, he's definitely a hitter, middle of the order type, but he works the count. And even working the count to get to that level of power, he strikes out in the process. Garver's a hitter. There's no way around it. He's not the greatest defensive catcher. And if he can get his groin problems, under control, I would have him in the all-star category. He's just not going to be able to do that this year playing catcher. I think by the time he's back, maybe they'll put him in the outfield corner or maybe they'll put him at DH or something and move Cruz there. I don't know. He's not going to be able to play catcher when he comes back, I don't think. If he does, that'd be fantastic. But Garver's not a defender, and he is one of the better bats that you will find at catcher. I underrated him. I didn't think he was going to rebound to the degree that he did, but he did get injured, so we'll see how he is when he comes back. But pretty phenomenal bat. Looks like the same kind of bat that we saw rookie year. Maybe not 100% on those levels, but definitely middle of the order. I'd be shocked if Mark doesn't put this guy at least in the good category, maybe in the all-star category.
Which was a guy that hits for exceptional power, not much behind the plate. Like, he's fine behind the plate. He's hitting for a lot of power, which we saw back in 2019 when he hit 30 homers and 300 at-bats.
Hitting for power, but how is he getting to the power? You're ignoring approach, which is what most people who look at the end totals of any player look at. Like, you could have literally the same numbers as another player, but if your approach is like a worse approach, you're a worse player, dude.
It's crazy. I think Mitch Garver's probably close to all-star category. I've been so hard on the guy.
Put him there. Put him there.
The
Good. Put him there. That's where he belongs.
A pretty average to like decent catcher. Like, he's not bad. And because he does have that huge power potential and he's showing it at least this year as an 844 OPS, I'll put Mitch Garver in all-star. Martin Maldonado.
It's a good pick, Mark. Good pick. All right. We got Martin Maldonado, who is the picture of who Mark is describing the below average category to be. He's a guy who cannot hit the broadside of a barn with a boat paddle at the plate, but is as phenomenal a defensive catcher as there is in the sport.
Also goes into, I think, the below average category.
Yep.
He's sick defensively. He is disgusting. That's his big thing. He's great defensive catcher, awesome at framing, but he can't hit. He can't hit at all. This is kind of where the below average category goes for you, because on teams that have offense, that's okay. And when you're talking about superstar, all-star catchers, while they can still have a great impact on their team because of what they do defensively, in terms of the best catchers in baseball, they don't go into the same categories as guys that hit and play good defense. I understand he's one of the better defensive catchers in the league, if not one of the best, but he can't hit. He is a negative at the plate. So he has value in what he does, but overall as a player, no. That's why he goes in below average. Max.
That's 100% the right call.
Stassi. Max Stassi's also going to go in the below average.
Yeah, you know, I'd put him in the below average category because Stassi, he kind of just holds his own. He can have a couple of hot weeks per year, hits lefties. He's not trash. He's not useless, you know. You can use him in a platoon, and he's a great player. Like, if you're trying to platoon out catcher to get to the playoffs because you can't have a catcher who hits righties and lefties, and you have like Omar Narvaez or some lefty catcher as your regular, having Stassi as your backup is phenomenal because he tattoos lefties. But as a everyday catcher, it's a similar reason why I have Austin Nola in that category, because Nola's a phenomenal backup, but I don't like him at all, even as on an average level as an everyday catcher. I don't think he's average. I think he's a below average catcher. I could be wrong, but I don't see it. It's not the kind of swing change that he would need to make to reduce his contact with power issues, or even certain contact issues if he's, you know, selling out for doubles power. So yeah, I'm not a Nola guy. But let's get back to Stassi, see what else he has to say about him.
Category. He's all right defensively, like average to below average, and at the plate, he's not as good as we saw last year. Just a below average player. There's really not a lot there to be excited about. Angels fans were pumped based on what he did last year. He regressed. Mike Zunino is weird.
All right, so yeah, if the Angels had Kurt Suzuki hitting or doing what Kurt Suzuki throughout his career has done, then yeah, you know, Stassi slots right in. But Kurt Suzuki has had a huge power drop-off. It's not really a huge on a season-to-season basis, but it's a pretty huge power drop-off when you look at like the past 6 years. It's been very gradual, which means it's not necessarily reversible without compromising on consistency, which I don't think is really Kurt Suzuki's game. So I think he's going to wait until later in the year, heat up naturally, getting, you know, his strength and bat speed and going in the second half of the season. I think honestly he doesn't have much bat speed to work with, so I don't know why I specifically said that. Kurt Suzuki's much more of a, you know, pitch selection guy. But again, you know, maybe that's what comes up at that point in the year, and he has a couple of months of being, you know, an everyday guy again. But it's just not looking good for Kurt. But yeah, like I said, for Stassi, phenomenal platoon option. About to get into Zunino, so I should say what I feel about Zunino. I think that Zunino is a phenomenal catcher if you have everybody else on your team of playoff caliber. I think he's a phenomenal catcher if you have somebody in the lineup to balance him out because he can't hit righties. All of his production comes against lefties. So if you're going back-to-back righty-lefty with him, that can work out really well. And knowing that he has, you know, the power bat that he does, if you know how to balance that out within your lineup, that can also help a lot. Or if your lineup, like if your lineup doesn't have much power, or if your lineup has a ton of contact and not tons of strikeout hitters, he's a guy who strikes out a lot, so you wouldn't want that to kind of add to things. Zunino is a phenomenal defender, about as good of a defender at catcher as they get. And he does hit for a consistent amount of power on a year-to-year basis, but it's very clear that his production comes against lefties. And at least this year, the production that he's had versus righties, it's come with a strikeout rate like in the mid-40s, almost like 50% of the time. Absolutely unsustainable. So as the season goes on, the offense is going to completely fall off a cliff. But it's only because like his offense versus righties is completely unsustainable. So let's see what he has to say about Zunino. He's probably actually going to go pretty hardcore with Zunino. I wouldn't be surprised if he put Zunino at like all-star or something like that, because everybody knows Zunino's defense is superstar. But right now, Zunino's counting stats, his average on-base percentage, slugging, and analytics, even Baseball Savant shows that he's a hitter. But if you break that down, like Baseball Savant can heavily weigh your numbers incorrectly with regards to splits, because all it does is show the data on balls put into play. It doesn't show who you're facing. So if you're looking at Zunino's numbers, all of his numbers are coming against lefties, and the numbers that are coming against righties at their current levels are completely and utterly unsustainable. But hey, if Savant says you're good and your results say that you're good and you're a good defender, then you're good. No. I genuinely hope I genuinely hope Mark does not go there, okay? But we're gonna have to see. But like I don't like Zunino, okay? I don't like him. I do not like Zunino.
I'm like, stop.
Definition of 3 true outcomes. He's basically hitting a home run, walking, or striking out. He's exceptional behind the plate. I think he goes in the where do I put Mike Zunino category? Average, like he's going off this year. I think he's average. 3 true outcomes. It's
good. Wow, Mark, you have gotten better, my friend. You have gotten better at analysis. Yes, Zunino belongs in the average category. His defense is phenomenal. His offense is there versus lefties like it is for Stassi, but like I said, much better defense than Stassi. And then the only difference outside of that is that he will like hit home runs on a consistent enough basis where over a full year he'll pop you like 20. So the fact that the walks are there, he could be driven in by other people. The fact that the home runs are there, he'll drive a mistake pitch. I'm very comfortable with that being enough of an offensive profile, even with the platoon splits, putting him in the average category with the level of his defense. So good on you, Mark. Actually, this might be your best call of the day.
Be anything more than like what he is. And while he is going off this year, look at the last few years. Awful offensively. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, put him in average, but he is a great defensive catcher. Love the way he calls a game, and he's got some pop in that bat. That's Mike Zunino.
All right, so he's about to go into Omar Narvaez. I paused it early here. Omar Narvaez was one of the worst defensive catchers in the game, like for quite some time. And he started to turn it around over the last couple of years. But then the offense fell off a cliff. He's also one of the few catchers in the game that happens to be left-handed. This year, the offense came back, and it looks real. He looks like a phenomenal catcher. He looks like a clear top 10. I'd be surprised if Mark didn't put him into the all-star category. But with the injury that he got, maybe Mark ends up putting him in good. I don't know. Let's see.
Omar Narvaez is doing something crazy, and that is he's playing defense. And the fact that he's playing defense with that plus bat at the plate makes him an all-star catcher.
Yes.
The thing with him has always been that he's got a good bat, but he can't catch. This year, he's catching, and he has a good bat. Put him in all-star. Big fan of Omar Narvaez. Glad to see him back swinging the bat so well with Brewers. Pedro Severino. It is truly shocking that this guy is a starting catcher in Major League Baseball, but hey, it's the Baltimore.
Yeah, Pedro Severino let me down big time this year because he had a killer first month and second month last year, and then he got hurt and he had a terrible last month. But I was like, oh, wow, this looks like, some sort of breakout because he did this over the first 2 months, and then it was injuries what stopped him. It was injuries what, stopped him from performing. And he went right back to the non-factor that he's been his whole entire career this year. Mark has not liked Pedro Severino for a while. Mark thought that he wouldn't have a good year, so that was one of Mark's predictions that ended up being right, where I was wrong. That rarely happens with regards to any analyst out there. But with regards to Severino, he just hasn't done it. He hasn't been anything good this year. I wouldn't be surprised if Mark put him in trash, but he belongs in the below average category. So let's see.
Orioles goes in the trash tier. Not good offensively.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew he'd put him in trash. No. He doesn't quite belong in trash. There's still lingering hope that he can at least be a league average hitter, because 2018 he was a league average hitter, and for the first 2 months he was 30% above league average last year before the injuries. Even if he ends up being 10% below league average but being able to play every day at catcher, that is a below average but quality everyday catcher. Trash means you can't do anything. Trash means you're costing your team. You're not giving your team anything to work with. I can't put Severino in that category.
Is the worst defensive catcher in all of baseball. Can say it definitively. There's no doubt in my mind. Pedro Severino cannot catch. He's terrible at it. He's not good. He goes in trash tier. No ifs, ands, or buts. Here comes the debate now. People are going to be like, oh, Roberto Perez. Roberto Perez can't.
All right. Now, this is a really interesting debate. I know exactly what he's about to talk about with Roberto Perez. Roberto Perez hits lefties. Roberto Perez, when he is in key situations that require him to produce, he can change his approach enough to be an effective hitter, which is why he has so many big moments with runners on, so many big game home runs, so many of those types of hits. But if it's not those types of situations, he's basically a walker and out. And that makes your season line over the course of a full year legitimately terrible. But Perez plays well above the line because of when you need him offensively with the game on the line, he contributes. And he plays above that line as well because the walk rate being in existence means he does have a decent on-base rate, so his teammates can drive him in. If you go lefty-righty with your lineup, which is starting to become the smart thing to do in baseball to throw off pitchers, if you put a lefty in front of him, that can also work in your lineup. And then, the big thing I forgot, Roberto Perez is a stud defensively. It's about as good as you get defensively. So, I would put him as at least an average catcher there with Zunino, there with, McCann. But I also would not hate, if you really understand who Perez is and his abilities in all situations, I'd be absolutely fine putting him on the good category of catching right there with Christian Vasquez. Just makes sense to me.
Roberto Perez's best offensive season was about league average. Sick defensively, but he is terrible at the plate. I'll put him in average, though, because he really is probably the best defensive catcher in baseball, or at least arguably one of the best. The bat at least has a little pop in it sometimes. Definitely haven't seen it the last, 70, 80 games, but give him the benefit of the doubt. Roberto Perez is sick defensively, but he's terrible at the plate. Awful. Just maybe a home run one.
So, real quick before we jump into the last 10-ish guys on the list, Real Muto, I agree. Posey's one spot too low. Carson Kelly's one spot too high. Garver's one spot too high, but this was before the injury, I think. I don't think Mark knew about that at this point in time. Omar Narvaez is exactly where he should be as far as an all-star. Nola is one spot too high in the good category. Vasquez is right where he should be in the good category. Jacob Stallings is right where he should be in the good category. Sanchez should be in the good category, but is in average. James McCann's in average, which is where he belongs for now, at least, unless we see further offensive improvements. Zunino belongs in average. I completely agree. Perez is somewhere between average and good. I'd be fine with him in either category, so I don't have a problem with that. Jansen, yeah, I guess fine. I'll put Jansen here because in the future, Jansen could hit. I don't think this year, but in the future, Jansen could hit. So, yeah, we'll put him at below average. Trevino belongs in trash as far as I'm concerned. Maldonado can be in below average just because his defense is so phenomenal, despite how bad the bat is. Then he's got Stassi in that category. I guess that's fine because Stassi's a fine platoon bat. He's got Elias Diaz in trash. He deserves to be in trash. He's got Jorge Alfaro in trash. I think this season that's appropriate, at least until he figures out to get how to get the tools to start translating. And he's got Pedro Severino one slot too low, despite the awful defense. Yeah, so that's where we're at. I mean, nothing too crazy. Nothing where it's like, somebody deserves to be moved 2 slots, unless we're talking about Nola. Nola's the only one. He should be in the below average category, not the good category. And yeah, let's continue. I think he's about to go into Sean Murphy, who's a phenomenal hitter, and he was a good prospect, but he's never, ever been able to stay healthy. So I would put him in the good category just because you don't see catchers who can defend and hit like him. But he's also on like a Travis d'Arnaud injury trek, maybe worse. So I don't know if I could put him on a top player list, if that makes sense.
In a while. He's just, I can't handle the people who are like, oh, defensively he's elite, so that makes him an elite catcher. No, it makes him an elite defensive catcher. He's
still talking about Perez here.
Up on most teams. Sean Murphy. I was really high on Sean Murphy coming into the year. He had shown a really good bat, but so far it's been not that good. Like, yes, his OPS plus is 100, so that's league average, but he's not really hitting for the power and the force that we thought he was in Oakland.
That's the worry when you're dealing with patient bats, that you bring them up too quickly, the league adapts to them, and they become league average because they're working the count to get the hittable pitches. So they're either getting mistakes to contribute with outside the zone with walks or mistakes to contribute inside the zone in the form of power, and both are mistakes. Good pitching won't give you that, and I'll tell you, a lot of guys at the big leagues are good pitching.
That being said, his defense is getting a little bit better, so I'm going to put him in the good category. Definitely, I think he's a good catcher. He's young, he's talented, he's going to be even better, but right now I think he's just good. Salvador Perez.
Yeah, that's a fine category to put him in right now. Good offense, good defense, no health, really. But you don't find, defense and offense at catcher. If you can get him healthy for a full year, yeah, it's a fine ranking.
Salvador Perez is going to go in the all-star category because what he does is he provides you.
Yeah, that's fine. Given that Sal Perez hasn't done it for multiple years, I'm absolutely fine. It's not like multiple years, but given that he doesn't have quite the track record that Realmuto has consecutively 3 years running, I am absolutely okay putting Sal Perez in the same category that he's putting Posey, just by his own definitions. I do think that if I was doing it, Sal Perez would be in the superstar category. Omar Narvaez is either an all-star or superstar at this point. Posey, same deal. A couple other guys. I just don't feel like any position is a position that, I get it, okay? Superstar is a certain definition. People have the definition of superstar, and it's a cross position. It's like, Bellinger, and it's Baez, and it go on and so on and so forth. The way I define it, especially when you're ranking singular positions, is this is the first tier. The first tier is the best of the position. These are the second tier, guys who are elite but are missing something. The only thing that his second tier is missing, Posey missed last season and, had one down year at some point before that. Carson Kelly, what is Carson Kelly missing? Well, he's not good against elite righties, but he's good against everyone else. What is Garver missing? Well, Garver is not the best defender, but he's adequate. What is Narvaez missing? Well, he's missing the ability to hit lefties. But what is Sal Perez missing? Oh, nothing really. But he's not necessarily a guy who walks so much, so I guess on base ability, but he's hitting so many balls that I don't really. I think he's able to. I've said this before. Guys who are aggressive hitters who can cover zone are always more effective versus higher end competition than guys who just wait for a pitch that they can do stuff with or work to it. All right, so let's keep going.
offense at the plate, which when you are a catcher who has great offense, it can automatically skyrocket you towards the top of the league. When you have a great offense, especially coming from the catcher position, it is immensely valuable. Hence why Gary Sanchez was able to be a top catcher in the league, despite basically not having any arms. Salvador Perez is starting to
Whoa. Why Sanchez could not be why Sanchez could be one of the better catchers in the league, despite not having arms. Here's the deal. Sanchez, all he has is arms. That's where he gets his power from, his back throwing shoulder. Like, that's kind of where most power hitters get their power from, their back shoulder. So arms is incorrect. He has arms. It might be all he has right now.
That category a little bit here as he gets older. The defensive-minded catcher that he once was, it's coming down more and more every single year. He's just not as sharp as he was behind the plate. But one thing that's coming around for sure is the bat. He's hitting better than he ever has in his career, and because he has been...
I do want to be clear here. Sanchez just having arms might actually be enough for him to be like 30-40% above league average. Mainly because his swing path with those arms is incredible. So... I don't want to be necessarily talking down on Sanchez, but what Sanchez mainly has working for him is his hands and arms at the plate. Like, he's got phenomenal hands and arms.
Great at the plate. He's going to go in all-star category, but he's probably getting a little bit closer to good. Also, though, I can totally see him being the starter.
Whoa. He just said that he belongs in all-star category, but might be better in good. Salvador Perez is not a just good catcher. The only way that you're going to get his numbers to come down from this person that he's grown into slowly over multiple seasons, he's added power, is if you play him way too much. Like, if you get 150 games with him behind the plate, he'll be so tired by the end of the year that he won't be able to hit. That's the only way that he's not belonging of being in the highest tier.
Catcher for the American League when it comes to the All-Star game, because among catchers in the American League, look who's up there. He's one of the best, and people care about offensive numbers when you talk about players typically more than defense, especially.
Yeah, legit, Sal Perez should be the starter in the AL for the All-Star game. I'd be shocked if it was anyone else.
When you're talking about All-Stars, Tucker Barnhart, I think is going to go in the average category as well. Give him the best.
This is a perfectly fine call, given how Tucker Barnhart is hitting right now. In the larger scope of things, Tucker Barnhart has been in a bit of a decline. He's doing certain things that he has to do in order to remain relevant, but I do not think that any of his good numbers this year are for real in any sort of way. I think by the end of the season, he's going to be continuing the decline. I think he kind of belongs closer to the below average category. That being said, he would probably, at least of the players that we've gone through so far on this list, he'd probably be the best below average catcher on that entire tier. So he's either the lowest on the average tier or he's the best on the below average tier. So
the doubt that he's hitting better than he really ever has before this year. He's looking like a little above average offensive catcher. He's a solid above average defensive catcher as well. So for this year, he's playing like a good guy. Like this year alone, he deserves up here. But in years past, again, he's been a defensive first guy. So I think when we even things out more realistically, I think he's right in that group of average.
For a guy like him on the older side of his career, you cannot average out things in this type of way. When you have a guy who their whole career has not been a hitter, right? They're not doing anything meaningfully different here. They're going off on a little hot streak because they're changing their approach, but it's not necessarily like the analytics back up what's happening here. It's more of he's doing things that pitchers have not, seen him do. They've been attacking him one way, and now he's basically flipped his approach on its back. This is a guy who, if you look into his numbers beyond just the average on base percentage slugging, if you look at expected average, if you look at expected slugging, if you look at his trajectory, if you look at his advanced analytics with regards to exit velocity, launch angle, like everything really, he's not this good, but he's consistent enough back there and a switch hitter and a good defender. And he's been doing this for years while remaining close enough to league average that he's definitely someone that you can play at catcher. I just don't necessarily think I'd call him, like I said, best of the below averages or just the worst of the average catchers. That's where I'd have him.
Catchers. Travis d'Arnaud is hard to rank because he just isn't playing right now because of an injury.
Now that is this is a very interesting player. Travis d'Arnaud, he's capable of absolutely going off for periods of time offensively, but he just keeps getting hurt. Like a normal average season out of him is like 85, 90 games, which again, like you're not required to get nearly as many games to be a catcher. Like you're supposed to have a backup that's going to play like 50 games a year or whatever. So the fact that he's, playing 20 less games than you need your catcher to play, it's not really ideal, but like it's close. And he does have periods of time where he can just go off. And I'm also pretty sure that if you made Travis d'Arnaud like your DH and backup catcher, or like your first baseman and backup catcher, just a position where d'Arnaud could just concentrate on the bat, he'd take another step forward. But right now, while he's hot and cold offensively, and while you don't know whether you're going to have him healthy, it's a little bit too hard for me to put him like in the good category. I'd have him in the average category, mainly because like when he is hitting and when things are going good for him and he's healthy, gives you everything you could ever want a catcher to give you. Problem is that there's the cold periods of time and then there's the injured periods of time. What happens if he has a cold period of time followed by an injured period of time? Then you're really in trouble for catcher production for the year. So d'Arnaud rather, they both came up around the same time. So yeah, both of them are powerful guys, but d'Arnaud, he's got the thing that Zunino could have never had, which is the ability to hit for average. And I think that at one point in time, Tampa Bay they were having those two guys compete on their roster for the spot, but I think they realized that d'Arnaud is too hot and cold to risk money on, because he was entering arbitration years and didn't quite have the defense that they need to support the kind of pitching and squad that they're trying to put out there. So they moved on from him. But I do think that like d'Arnaud's one of the more oddly talented guys independent of position in the game, because every team needs a backup catcher. Every team needs a DH, or at least, AL teams. Every team, period, needs a first baseman. And I think he could be phenomenal as a DH backup catcher, first baseman. It's just if we're looking at him isolated at catcher, I can only say he's, good or average. I can't say he's an all-star type, although for backups, for, backup catchers and people in that kind of role, he would be an all-star level player. It's just, I don't even think he wants that role. I think at this point in d'Arnaud's career, he wants to keep playing every day. So maybe he can find a way to join a team that will sometimes use him at catcher, but will like just straight up give him the first base spot or the DH spot. I don't know. But with the Braves having Langeliers or Langiers, however it's pronounced, coming up, as well as Wilson Contreras' younger brother, William, who's incredible, by the way. If you haven't seen him, definitely check him out. I think that d'Arnaud might be leaving the squad. I believe he's a free agent fairly shortly. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they traded him at the deadline or moved him to some sort of different position to accommodate for injuries. Like Ozuna's hurt, so not Ozuna's hurt. Ozuna's banned. Ozuna assaulted his girlfriend, and he is banned from baseball. That's probably the news that I wanted to get out of the way for the week. Banned from baseball for life. Like, look, okay, they haven't officially announced it, but there's no way that they're not going to ban him. He literally did what he did to his girlfriend in eyeshot of the police. I'd be surprised if he ever plays another game. Marcell Ozuna. But given the fact that the Braves are going to need offense, and Contreras could be coming up later in the year, and that maybe corner outfield would help d'Arnaud stay healthy. It's not the worst idea when you have somebody who can cover everywhere in the outfield like Acuna. So anyway, let's jump back in.
The last few years, we've seen him really wake up the bat. He looked good with the Braves. He's always been a great framer, but can't throw out runners. I'm going to put Travis d'Arnaud in the good category.
Mark is having a good day. Don't get me wrong. There are most players on this list that I would put in different categories, but they're not egregious picks. Like every single player in the below average and trash category isn't really the greatest player, isn't really a guy that I would want to play catcher for me. Every player in the average category and good category, I'd be fine with, assuming the conditions around them are fine enough. Everybody on the all-star level or on the superstar level is somebody who I would desire to have as my catcher. So even though there's definite, picks that, I think that he's misassessing most guys, it's not massively. So
he's one of the best catchers in the league. Like, not that all-star upper echelon, but I think he is good. Like, upon further review, thinking about it, he's a good catcher. And there was always that potential with him in New York. He just couldn't stay healthy. And what do you know? He's not healthy with the Braves. Always the biggest thing with Travis. Tom Murphy, I don't know where to...
I don't like Tom Murphy. I think he's super overrated, sold out for power basically as soon as he entered the league. I think he's trash. I can understand him being put in below average because similar to Stassi, you could probably platoon him. But I don't trust him even as much as Stassi because he sold out to get to that early career production. Just not a Tom Murphy fan.
He's like below average offensively, maybe even average, below average defensively. Again, maybe even average. That probably thinks, I'm going to put him here. But because he doesn't really even have that glove, I'm going to put him below average. All these guys here.
That's fine. That's a perfectly fine place to put him. Trash or below average, as long as he's there.
Have something good if they're not that great at one thing. Tom Murphy's just not that great at all of it, but also he's not bad. So I think below average is pretty fair for Tom Murphy. Willson Contreras is so close to being a superstar. He's getting better defensively.
All-star.
He's improving.
Willson Contreras is undoubtedly going to go in the all-star category. Year in, year out, he gives you enough defensively. Year in, year out, he gives you an above-average bat offensively. He produces in big moments. He produces for power, produces for average, at least as much as you'd want a catcher to. He gets on pace enough. He doesn't strike out a ton. Wilson's great. His brother Williams, I think, going to be even better. But we're going to see the two of them in the league, barring injury, for a while. They might even both at some point, very shortly, be in the top 5 catchers. Imagine two brothers in the top 5 catchers. I think the last time that happened was early career Yadi Molina, while Benji Molina was still, hitting homers. And even then, it wasn't like they could both play defense because Benji could never play defense. So this is going to be cool to see. Two brothers who are good all-around catchers. Who knows how long their careers could last. All right, let's jump back in.
I don't think he catches that bad of a game as people think. I think he's improving there. Right now, I think he's an all-star, and this also makes me think that I'm putting too many guys in the all-star category, which, whatever, it's fine. I do think that there's an upper echelon. There's everybody else. There's the guys who are better than the middle, and then there is the middle. I don't know. He's very good. I think Willson Contreras is a solid catcher, top 5 in the game. I don't think he's a superstar yet because these guys really are on their own level, but Willson Contreras is a beast and one of my favorite catchers to watch in the game. So after Wilson Ramos's hot streak, Wilson Ramos went back to not being...
Yeah, Wilson Ramos is trash. Trash on the bases. Trash on defense. Trash offensively. He's trash.
Very good. Defensively, by no means is he solid. He is, if anything, probably one of the worst defensive catchers typically in the league, at least the last few years. But he's looking better this year. I'll put him in the below average category because I don't think it's trash him when he is hitting a little bit and he's not playing as bad defense as he has in the past. He's close to trash tier. He's on his way out, but he looked decent for a good point this year. I'm a big Will Smith fan. I've been a Will Smith fan.
All right. Will Smith is going to go in the all-star category. He should go in the all-star category. I would not be surprised if Mark put him in the superstar category. Mainly.
Rapper?
All right. Get jiggy with it. Anyway.
I'm just letting you know we should start wrapping up soon.
Oh, yeah. No, I got you. I wanted to – well, he's got 4 catchers left. We're going to be wrapping up very shortly. So literally 3 minutes left in his video, down to 1 second, actually. But, yeah, Will Smith, I understand him putting in the superstar category because Will Smith, he does all the things that analytical people love. He hits the ball very hard. He hits the ball often enough, as in not striking out. He walks a bunch, so the on-base ability is there. He doesn't really get hurt. He's not the most phenomenal defensive catcher. He doesn't have the most phenomenal raw contact skill. He works the count. And he is a good enough hitter that he doesn't strike out enough doing that approach. But I just don't think that this is a guy who can hit against the highest levels of competition, because he's a guy who works the count in order to do Will Smith might be the most polished player offensively in recent years that I've seen. He knows that pitchers mainly give him first pitch fastballs because they mainly give everyone first pitch fastballs. So he usually maxes out his swing on first pitch fastballs. After that point in time, his whole thing is either I'm going to get a pitch that I can do damage with, or I'm going to walk. So he just starts working the count at that point in time. He starts fouling pitches off. And people say no one ever tries to foul pitches off, but you kind of do. If you have that type of approach where you have an A swing, you're not necessarily completely following the pitch's trajectory. You're getting your A swing off as fast as you can, as strong as you can. And if you don't line it up with the pitch properly, guess what happens? You foul off the pitch. So I've always been a proponent of you gotta get your swing tunnel on the pitch tunnel. But he's very much been the type of guy who succeeds on mistakes. Mistakes in the zone, mistakes early in the count, mistakes late in the count, and then mistakes outside the zone to walk on. He's very consistent with his approach. So throughout the year, he walks a lot. It's for a lot of power. I'm not trashing on Will Smith here. I do think that he's an all-star catcher. And right now, I might even put him in the top 5 catchers in baseball. That being said, if you're not putting Posey as a superstar, or you're not putting Sal Perez or Wilson Contreras as superstars, there's no world in which Will Smith should be a superstar.
Is ever since he got called up, I think this dude has one of the best bats at catcher in all of Major League Baseball. While the home run numbers aren't high there yet, he has a great OPS. He's only ever matched at the Major League level, and defensively he's improving. I'm willing to say Will Smith is one of the top 3 catchers in baseball. I'm willing to put him in the superstar tier.
I knew it. Yeah, this is a terrible pick. He is not a superstar. You cannot have him over plenty of the other players on there. Like, let me put it this way, okay? With what I expect out of Sanchez for the rest of the year, Sanchez is going to either be as good as Will Smith by the end of this season or better. And you have Sanchez as an average player, and you have Will Smith as a superstar. This is a terrible call.
Be upset. They're going to be like, oh, with the defense, how can you put him higher than a guy like Austin Hedges? Save me. Offense is what you love to see. You can find anybody to
Offense is what you love to see at first base, at DH, at right field, at catcher, which is the most important position defensively on the diamond. If you are adequate defensively, it brings down your profile if you're not elite. You're looking at Posey. Posey's been elite his whole career. You look at Real Muto, elite his whole career. If you look at Sal Perez, he's been elite. If you look at Wilson Contreras, he's been elite. If you look at Vasquez, he's been elite. Will Smith's defense is right there with Sanchez. I don't care who you're talking to. It's right there with Sanchez. Yeah, he lets all these pass balls go. Cool. Sanchez changed that. He put his knee down like Garver does. That's not a problem anymore. And Sanchez is still who he is with the arm. Will Smith doesn't have the arm. So this is just not a good pick.
Defensive catcher. There's a reason guys like Austin Hedges don't start on teams. There's a reason
that Austin Hedges doesn't start on teams, but yet there's reasons that Martin Maldonado does.
Defensive catchers don't get the majority of playing time. Offense still is the king. Defense, you just need to be fine. If you can put out at an elite level offensively, which is what Will Smith does for the catcher position, you look past the defense. And even then, he's still pretty deep.
I mean, he's not entirely wrong, where if you can hit 25% above league average, people will look past the defense. That being said, it's not an offense first position. I know the big leagues are offense first right now, but there are some positions that are offense first, and there are some positions that are not as much offense first. And when you're looking at this page, like half the guys on here can't hit and are amazing defenders. The other half of the guys can hit league average and are amazing defenders. Like, there's a couple of guys who are really terrible defenders. You got Severino, you got Sanchez, you got like a few guys. Even then, like Sanchez, I wouldn't say he's really terrible. Severino's really terrible. Like, it's a misassessment of defense on Will Smith's part and a misassessment of everything on Sanchez's part. Because how on one side can you rank Will Smith so high on offense without the defense really being that strong, and then rank Sanchez so low when his offense is like that, right? But the defense is like adequate. Like this does not make any sense. It's very clear that he's biased against Sanchez. Anytime Sanchez is not doing well because he's a Yankee, he wants to put him down. Like this is typical Mark hating on the Yankees stuff. Like, Mark, you've gotten so much better as an analyst. I love you, buddy. I'd love to do content with you and everything. But if we're just being completely real about things, like, you gotta stop with the Yankees bias. It makes all of the other progress that you make with, analyzing players, all of these different players, right? It makes it look foolish. Because, you say the same things about almost every Yankee. The only Yankees that you don't, routinely, lay a dookie on are, Judge, who never has, down numbers. And yet you've still been down on Judge for his health. But anyone who's 6'6", 6'7" is not going to be able to make it a full 162 games. That's always been the case. Richie Sexson, Giancarlo Stanton, Judge. So it's just, you got to stop with it. You got to stop with the anti-Yankees bias, because your work is good and you've gotten better, but you got to stop with it. It's a problem. And also stop with the definitive statements, man. Especially when you don't know what you think you know. Do the research, then make the definitive statements. And look, if you see me make it, Mark, if you are listening to this, Mark, if you see me say stuff that's ignorant, call me out. But you got to stop with this Yankees bias, dude. It's awful.
That defense. Offensively, though, he's incredible. Superstar. Also, joining him in the superstar category, 4 catchers he knew was going to be.
No, goodness gracious. So he's putting Yasmani Grandal in the superstar category. Grandal is an adequate catcher who is considered to be well above average at catcher because of his framing. He's the best framer by far in the major leagues. But when pitch framing goes away, which it already should have, his defense becomes completely adequate. It becomes good, not great. He's a switch hitter, right? And switch hitters, they take a while typically to heat up. But even with the juiced ball, he took a while to heat up. And some of his decline has been able to be stalled and put on hold because of the juiced ball. The ball becomes more juiced. He can put more balls in play, foul off less pitches. And it also allowed him to stave off some of his strikeouts by walking more, because he was fouling off more pitches that were harder pitches. And hitting more balls into play that were harder pitches. So, it's a direction. But Grandal, he's not hitting at all this year. He's walking. He's walking 30% of the time. But he's not hitting in any way whatsoever. I don't understand this pick. I'd say, given that Sanchez is starting slow and heating up, and Grandal is starting slow and then is expected to heat up, why don't we bump Sanchez up? This is just clear anti-Yankee bias. Grandal is allowed to start slow, but Sanchez isn't. Whatever.
Yasmani Grandal. While his numbers are so bizarre this year, and there's going to be people upset that I'm putting a guy who's hitting 150 in the superstar category, he is still just putting up insane offensive numbers.
It's not insane offensive numbers. If you're walking 30% of the time, right? You should absolutely have a fine on base percentage. But if you can't hit a baseball fair in the major leagues and hit it hard, there's problems, all right? And I get it. He's a switch hitter, and he takes a while to heat up, because most switch hitters do. But, this is extraordinarily extreme. I don't think I've ever seen a walk rate this high with no hitting ability right now. And here's the other thing about Grandal is that, in recent years, it's been very apparent that he is going through a decline. He's just compensating.
sense, but he's doing it. Despite hitting 135 this year, he's walked 42 times, striking out 37, has a WRC plus of 124. He's a great offensive catcher, even though the average isn't.
Yeah, WRC plus of 124. Mind you, Sanchez in the last month is already 20% above league average, just in that month. So, like, Sanchez is doing it through hitting for power, walking, just putting balls in play and doing damage. Grandal is walking. That's it. There's no power. There's no singles. There's no doubles. He's just walking. Like, I can't understand this pick. Like, look, I get it right now, Mark. You're making these assessments based off of what has happened in the season so far. You're clearly not making these assessments over what you think these players will do at the end of the year, where they'll be at the end of the year. Because then I'd understand the Grandal pick, but then the Sanchez pick makes no sense. Like, it makes no sense at all to put Sanchez this far down and Grandal that high up. Like, you have to understand how much approach factors in to how much damage you can do. Like, Sanchez on the season is league average offensively, right? But he's heated up recently to bring him to that level. Grandal is 20-something% above league average offensively. He does it all through walks. Sanchez walks and hits for extreme levels of power for a catcher. Like, Sanchez, his league average total, especially with him heating up recently, plays up. And Grandal's number plays way down. Because the only time Grandal can contribute is if a pitcher is wild. That's it. And even then, there's no way to drive in runs. Walks don't drive in runs. This is the huge flaw with regards to these analytical statistics that seemingly like grade everything evenly. They don't. Because they don't grade approach. Like, there's no way to say that what Grandal is doing is better than what Sanchez is doing at the plate. Like, major issues with this.
It's weird. He's very much committed to this home run, walk, strikeout thing. He's going to hit for a higher average at some point, though. He's great defensively, even though this year he's been average. He's shown in the past he's a very solid defensive catcher. He's one of the best catchers in the league. People have the argument between him and Real Muto. He has to go in superstar category.
There's no argument. It's Realmuto.
Yan Gomes is going to join the average category. Defensive.
This is something that I'm actually okay with. Yan Gomes, he crushes lefties. He's consistent enough on a day-to-day basis where you can play him out there versus righties. And in addition to that, he's got one of the strongest arms at catcher. Even if he's not the greatest at framing or blocking, he can throw guys out. I'd almost say if everything went wrong with Sanchez, that's who he'd be. He'd be Yan Gomes if everything went wrong. Perfectly adequate, average catcher. Right there with Barnhart.
He's normally a pretty strong defensive catcher. Like, he's pretty good. The bat is always a little below average, like an 80 OPS plus guy. He swings a fine bat. He's a fine defensive catcher. That puts you in average when you're just...
I'd also like to mention that Gomes has gotten dramatically better over the last 3 or 4 seasons. So we might not have even seen the best of him. Maybe he does start hitting righties. And if that happens, given how good he hits lefties, and given that he has a good arm at catcher, I think he could be an above average catcher. But we need to see that develop. We need to see his ability to hit righties materialize.
Define at everything. I'm going to put Yadi in good. People might be upset because he's hitting really well this year.
Yadi deserves to be in All-Star. His defense, plus the level of offense that he has kicked things up to, I don't care about age if you can perform. I don't know why anyone would. If you can perform, you can perform. If you're showing that you're falling off due to age, then you can't perform. I don't get it. Yadi, absolutely, especially after a career of this. Goodness gracious. He deserves every bit to be put on that level with Sal Perez. I don't agree with this one.
For Yadi, the defense is slipping. You got to admit it. He is not the same great defensive catcher that he once was. He's hitting really well this year, which is a surprise to see because, he kind of does this every once in a while, and sometimes even to start the year gets hot. I'll be interested to see how he finishes.
Here's another thing I want to mention. It's not that his defense has slipped. It's that when you're 38 years old, you can't throw runners out like you could when you were 28 years old. He doesn't have the gun that he used to. He puts it right on the bag every time, so he has as good of a shot of gunning out people as anyone else. But the rest of the defense is there. The blocking, the framing, all of it. It's just the same guy. Like, and if any of the numbers are down, it's small sample size. It's Yadi. Come on. Like, this guy day in, day out, year in, year out, for 15 years has done this. And he's hitting. And it looks legitimate. The analytics show. So it's just, I don't. All right, whatever, Mark.
I just don't know how he's going to be able to do that. But right now, based on what he's doing, what he's seeing, defense, the guy that he is definitely a good catcher. I don't think he's in the all-star category. He might be an all-star this year just because that's how all-star voting works. But I don't think he's one of the best catchers, especially in the National League, which is definitely the strongest of the two leagues this year catching-wise. And Cardinals fans support the hell out of their guys. I don't think he deserves to be the all-star, but he's
There's no way that Yadi is going to be the number one in the All-Star or the number two in the All-Star game in the National League. Just say it now. They got Real Muto. They got Posey ahead of him. I doubt that with the year that Posey's having, that Yadi's going to get more votes than him. But given, the Cardinals having won like a lot more in recent years than the Giants, and I don't mean like, World Series, because then it's the other way around. But I'm talking about recent years, as in we're talking 2018, 19, 20, 21. Giants haven't really been that good. I'd understand if their fans have kind of disassociated a little bit with the team, but they don't have a reason to do that this year. In terms of all-star voting, I think that Posey outdistances him. I know that Real Muto will outdistance Yadi. So maybe he makes it as like the third string catcher in the all-star game, but like Will Smith with all the Dodger fans, I mean, I don't think he gets to the all-star game in that kind of a way. But if we're looking at like level of talent, is he an all-star level? Yeah. He's on par with any of the other guys that like are the, meat and potatoes, so to speak, of the all-star category. Like, I'd put Yadi right there with Sal Perez. I'd put Yadi right there with Mitch Garver, given that Mitch Garver can't play defense and Yadi can play defense, especially as like an opposite kind of level. I put Yadi right there with Carson Kelly. And again, like, this is another situation where Yadi's approach matters so much because Carson Kelly, he's a patient bat. Garver is a patient bat. Carson Kelly has defense, but as a patient bat, he has trouble versus certain types of pitchers. Yadi doesn't have trouble versus any arm, especially in big situations. He can call it out of himself. He's an incredible hitter, incredibly natural talent. And that's all of the catchers on his tier list rankings. I think the next time we do a live stream, we should probably do like one of his other videos or something like that, or maybe we'll just mix it up. I don't know. I want to see how the response is to this one and what you guys think of it. Should we do content like this in the future where we're evaluating other people's lists? Overall, Mark, you did a good job, even though, it's baseball. We gotta be spicy with our critiques. I mean, this is hot takes here. So, Mark, I this is no disrespect to you throughout this whole thing. If I do a list like this, you analyze mine, but there were definitely, I'll say, quite a few players where I would have had them one slot down or one slot up. There weren't a ton of egregious picks. And then the one pick that I can really see as being like completely biased, the Sanchez pick, I understand because he hates the Yankees. He legitimately hates the Yankees. So if there's a chance that there's a player that the Yankee fans love who is overrated, he's going to jump on it and, get a little better at that, I don't do that for the Mets. So either way, it was a pretty decent ranking. He has clearly gotten better from his rankings a year or so ago. So credit to him. And that's about all I got to say here. Pretty decent rankings. Maybe we'll use some sort of similar tier maker in the future and put out ours in a similar way. I don't know if people would really want to see that. But when everybody puts out, their tier lists at the same time, some people like to see them to compare. Some people like to see them to see who's more accurate and whatnot. And I think that that's really beneficial. But also, people get tired of tier lists when they all come out at the same time. And they kind of tune out sometimes. So if you guys want to see something like that out of what we do, definitely request it. I'm definitely down to do something like that. And that's all I got for today.
I mean, I just want to go ahead and say, like, I really like content like this. I don't know about you. It seemed you did great, reviewing all his stuff and things like that. I can name a handful of live streamers that do this all the time. So it's clear that people are going to like this content. We had a pretty good group of people that showed up to watch the live stream tonight. So it's like,
I love it when we get a turnout.
Yeah. So it's like clearly like the content's great. So, I mean, we could try more of this more often. You know what I mean?
Definitely not against it. Definitely not against it.
Yeah, totally.
I know that Robbie has his lists as well. I'd love to do a critique of his stuff. I'm pretty sure that Jolly has some lists out there as well.
Yeah, so maybe we switch it up every time. Maybe we do different lists. We do different people. You know what I mean? Not always the same thing.
Yeah,
show everyone some love.
What would be really cool is if we can kind of create this kind of communal environment where we're all able to put out content and we can all critique each other. And then, at the end of the year, everybody can see who's right, who's wrong. And, it can be kind of like a competitive thing. I think that would be kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really like that. I think it's a good idea. So, I mean, thank you everyone for stopping by. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you get notified every time we go live. The YouTube's for live streams, and also we publish the podcast on here as well. Don't forget to look up our podcast on every major podcasting network. And I mean, see you all next time.
See you there.